Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this finds you well. This light's a little bright. There we go. That you're in good health and secure. Thank you for your practice. I'm going to say a little blurb before we start on the cycle of birth and death. It's something that if you've been part of the Sangha for a while and you've listened to several videos, at some point you've heard me talk about this before. One of my big motivators for starting this resource was the problem of language, especially in the study of Buddhism, because so much comes from hundreds, if not thousands, years of history, scholarship, translation. And if you're studying Buddhism on your own or with our Sangha, whatever, there is a critical aspect of study that I think you need to enter into this understanding in order to be able to glean the meaning. And Shakyamuni spent a lot of time talking about this. Things that he said, like however Buddhism's teachings are spread, because it was an oral tradition for hundreds of years, certainly in his day. And his thought on that was that wherever Buddhism was taught, it should be taught in the local vernacular, what people are accustomed and familiar with, in order to lead them, each of us, to our own insights. That's interesting, and that's very compassionate of him. But it also, the downside of it is that if you're using the same old terms and terminologies, you can get stuck in old thinking. And in fact, that's pretty much the history of Buddhism. This is why the scholarship is so important, because you have people that show up like Nagarjuna or Vasubandhu or Tendai or Dengyo or, in fact, Nichiren, who go back into the translations, the recordings, the history of Shakyamuni's teachings, and they have to demonstrate unequivocally what is meant by these stories, expedient means, teachings, because people keep getting hooked into the words and old thinking, and they don't get it. They don't get the message. So, the reason I'm talking about this now is cycle of birth and death, or even the word samsara. That's pre-Buddhism, right? Those words are from Hinduism. Remember, he taught this almost 3,000 years ago to a culture, a huge culture, India, that was very magical and mystical. It still is to this day. And that's my point. People get hooked into these stories and ideas, and once you separate people from their experience as the drivers of their experience, and you have people, like all religions, put it out there into other, like the universe or life itself is happening to you rather than you having the opportunity to experience it and drive it forward. That's a very, very profound and just I wanted to say, in fact, it infuses every aspect of your experience to understand that we are the drivers of our lives. We just don't tend to think that way because culturally, religiously, we're constantly told, that we have to wish for things, pray for things, ask of the universe, ask of the gods, ask of whatever, as though we're just poor little receptacles waiting for things to happen to us and responding and tumbling through life. Well, that's exactly what Shakyamuni was pointing out in the First Noble Truth. That kind of life, that kind of samsara, the cycle of birth and death, is suffering by its very nature, because there's an infectious idea that we are not the ones driving life, that life is just a burden put on us. And that is the antithesis of Buddhism. So get that straight first. And secondly, understand that the language that Shakyamuni was using to teach these magically minded people was language that was largely familiar to them. He wasn't inventing new terms, but he was shifting the meaning of that rhetoric to help cultivate the capacity of the people in his day. And it's important to know that going in, because if you don't, or if you forget, you tend to get drawn into these stories and so forth, and you forget that he's not teaching this magical, mystical wonderland. He's teaching a way to convert that thinking into self-realization. That this is how the mind works. This is where we go astray and how to bring it back. Like the word karma. Right? You've heard me talk about this before. Brahmins, the elite of the Indian society, would make appointments to come to your home and speak to your whole family and basically tell you what your life was going to be. It's like ordering your life from a Sears catalog. What? Or Amazon today, yeah? Your karma is this. You're a cobbler, that's all you'll ever be. Your children will be cobblers. You will always be in this caste. Your life will look like this. You will have 3.9 children. You will have They would just program you. And then you would just be slovenly, just like a slug, just living it out. What can I do? This is my lot in life. This is my destiny. People still think like this today. It's easy because it's lazy. Buddhism doesn't tolerate that. And this is why the word karma today has two ways of looking at it. Karma is very much your determination of how you're going to live your life. But fundamentally, karma is just life. It's the function of energy becoming matter with tendencies and conditions. Boom. That amalgam of tendencies and conditions that instantiates as me, as you, as Bob, as Betty. It's not good or bad. It's not positive or negative. It's just karma. It's energy. Now, our conscious mind can affect, influence that energy. That's the whole. It's not opposed on you. It's your operating system. Now, what are you going to do with it? Okay? So, cycle of birth and death, in fact, I've seen it translated as cycle of life and death, and that's from Hinduism, and we'll talk about that in here, is this whole idea of reincarnation. It's so not Buddhist. It's unbelievable. I wish he'd had come up with different terms for it because it confuses people all the time, even today, right? But if you understand life happens moment to moment, that's the cycle. And death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth because birth, death is just this little moment to moment, little flip of a coin, right? On, off, like in computers, ones and zeros. All right, so with all of that, let's get into it and give it all away here. So cycle of birth and death. 1, samsara. They're interchangeable terms. 2, although we use them differently in modern Buddhism, right? 2, moment to moment. That same engine I was talking about, right? 3, instantiation from potential. Instantiation from potential is karma, but that's number 4, karma. So these 4 terms associated with the cycle of birth and death, now let's get into it. This one has many meanings with different traditions and cultures, not in our practice of Buddhism, but in various traditions and cultures, right? The yoga people see it completely differently than the Jains or the different branches of Hinduism. I mean, there's just no end to these fanciful. But in Buddhism, it's very straightforward. So, for modern Buddhists, the engine of life is manifesting constant change and instantiating energies in moment-to-moment momentum as time and space. And you can look up each of those words. We've talked about them a lot. But hang in there, you'll see where I'm going here. Each discrete moment is understood to arise, decay, and end. This is the literal definition of the cycle of birth-death. Arises, decays, ends. Arises, decays, ends. The big difference is that we're not talking about an 80, 90-year lifetime of a human being. We're talking about moments, right? Look up moment in here and look at the chart that I've included. What is it? It's like 43 decimal points before a digit. The Planck number for the shortest possible time span. That's a moment. This is the literal definition. The only nuance to add to this is the habit energy or the kinetic nature of our momentum leading into successive moments from the decayed energies of the previous moment as a source of a sort of a vacuum, and infinitesimally created by the extinction of each moment. This is in fact the momentum, right? So it can be confusing to think about time in our experience, no matter how small and unfathomable we can make that time, in a moment, 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. How many moments does it take to comprise a second? Trillions and trillions of them. So it just goes to show you in Buddhism the amount of options of potential that we have for manifesting each moment, albeit with our freight train, our moment-to-moment momentum, so that one moment carries into the next, not identically, but with the influence of the space between the moments, the interstitials. It's almost, if we couldn't put labels on it, we couldn't identify it. It's just so fast. But that just also shows you how important it is to keep our attitude intact all the time. The more we keep our attitude in Buddha-ness, the more we affect that momentum, that stream of moments. Yeah, that's why we practice every day. That's why we stay, as Nichiren says, trying to live our day, each moment in Myoho Renge Kyo, so that we're constantly moving toward our maximal, full enlightenment potential, not being distracted by the monkey mind, yeah? So let's keep going. Tragically, in ancient early teachings of Buddhism, this concept was swallowed whole as another way of talking about reincarnation, the prevalent religious myth of the day. Reincarnation in Buddhism is utter nonsense, and Shakyamuni spoke at length on impermanence and anatman, etc., many concepts he developed in opposition to that kind of magical thinking. But, that gets forgotten because people like what's familiar to them. To dispel such ignorance. But cultural stigmas die hard, if at all. Even the Dalai Lama has said he chooses not to correct his followers for fear of hurting their feelings. How pathetic. Right? That's our modern day example, if you will, in a whole culture, Tibetan culture, that claims to be a reincarnation. That's very central to their practice. It's not Buddhism. And the Dalai Lama knows this. I saw him in an interview with John Oliver. John asked him about this. You know reincarnation is hogwash, right? So why don't you tell your followers this? And the Dalai Lama's, these traditions have gone on for centuries. And so I don't want to hurt these families' feelings. It would crush them. Well, I'm sorry, but the truth is the truth. At some point, you've got to pop the pimple, right? You're their leader. What the hell? Anyway, this video isn't about Tibetan Buddhism, so. But just point made, right? The cycle of birth and death. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Many early schools of Buddhism therefore developed the idea that the cycle of birth and death was a synonym for samsara, believing samsara to be a state of delusion that would carry on one life and into the next. This was tantamount to the creation of a new religion of mystical and magical thinking, not unlike all other magical religions of the day that persist even to this day. It's incredible, right? The cycle of birth and death is simply a descriptive way of stating momentum, as it is, truly nonlinear and rather a continual series of instantiations, right? Right? Think of radio waves. Think of any sound you hear is frequencies. Frequencies of what? Little air pressure moments, right? At different time periods we experience through our ear consciousness, right? As different pitches from high to low. They're frequencies. They're not things in themselves. They're happening moment to moment, and we're analyzing them and interpreting them, right? That's life. That's the activity of life, or as I call it, the engine of life. This is important because it is the interstitial spaces in those moment-to-moment instantiations that provide for opportunity to influence, learn, teach, etc. If there were no spaces, no moment-to-moment, if there were nothing there, then each moment would be identical. There would be no moments, right? So there would be nothing at all. It is that space between the moments, the interstitial moments, the moment-to-moment, where we can experience one way and influence the other way. We're in that momentum. The engine, like pistons, right? On, off, on, off, on, off. Moment, birth, death. Right? So that's the cycle of birth and death. The cycle that we seek to escape isn't life. It's the trap, right, of just having karma happen to us rather than influencing it and being in it to fully realize what's happening, what's going on. Because we don't, in samsara, in the cycle of birth and death, where we trap ourselves in trying to hang on to moments that are disappearing. And we try to hang on via identifying stuff, which identifies us. So we're really, really trapped in that. If I don't have all this stuff, then I don't exist. Right? That's psychologically what's happening. That's suffering. That's what we mean when we say we're trapped in the cycle of birth and death. Not trapped here in this 80-year lifespan on this earth. Oh, God, I can't get out. Where do I go? See, this is where the mind gets magical. So obviously, when I die, I get to go somewhere else. No, that's silly. That's childish. You see? Okay. Well, I hope that helps. I have several videos about this, coming at this from different directions. So please use the search icon on the homepage, the video channel on YouTube, the little magnifying glass icon next to the About section with the playlists and all that in the middle of the page, right? And, type in cycle of birth and death, or just birth and death, or samsara. You'll get videos from all different angles, and some of them are years old, so I apologize if they're not quite current in my... I'm always, as you are, expanding my vocabulary about how to talk about this. But, all of it will bring you insights, because you need to get this for yourself, right? You need to find in your way of understanding and your experience of life, I get this. Yeah. Namo Myo Renge-kyo. Thank you so much for participating, liking, and subscribing. It's a bodhisattva act. It takes you just a few seconds, right? And it helps the algorithm make us more accessible to more people. There's a lot of people looking for correct practice information that isn't full of agendas and groupthink and all of that. Just want some clear, modern language around how to practice and how it works. What does it do? Yeah. That's what I'm hoping this resource is, the website, the ebooks, all of it. And by the way, you who have purchased ebooks and books and mandalas and who make donations through Patreon and PayPal, you guys are incredible. Thank you so much. We all appreciate your helping to support and keep this Sangha a valuable resource. All right? With that, let me wish you a good day. Take care of your health. Be kind. And I'll see you in the next one. All right? Thanks again. I'm so proud of you guys. It motivates me to keep doing this. So let me know if you have any questions, comments. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.